In July of 2023, we took a week-long trip to Normandy, France, because we wanted to see all of the sites of World War II. When you look at this map, you can see we've went and visited quite a few places. Our Airbnb was right on Omaha Beach, and from there we spoke-wheeled out to all of the other places that we wanted to visit. In truth, we probably could have had it done in 3 to 4 days, but we did like to relax when we were done for the evening. We also made it to Mont-Saint-Michel and Brittany American Cemetery, and with the driving, that was almost the entire day. On day one, we left our Airbnb just north of Utah Beach. We visited several memorials to include the Utah Beach Memorial and the Utah Beach Museum. Our first stop was the Utah Beach D-Day Landing Memorial and Monument of the Landing of the French 2nd Armored Division. As you drive along the Atlantic Wall Road, you can start to see many of the German positions and bunkers along the way. At this memorial, you can walk around and enjoy the beach, head down further onto the beach, and walk amongst some of the German positions that were on the Atlantic Wall. Less than a kilometer down the road is the Utah Beach Memorial and the Museum of Utah Beach. There are several memorials, including a memorial to the 90th Division, the Utah Beach Memorial, monument to the United States Navy, a monument to the 4th Infantry Division, and the 1st Engineers Special Brigade. The Utah Beach Landing Museum has excellent exhibits on the landing at Utah Beach and the ensuing battle which has occurred after the landing. Next stop was Sainte-Mere Eglise and the Airborne Museum. One of the coolest exhibits was a replica or reconstructed glider used by 325 or 327 Glider Infantry Regiments to land behind enemy lines on D-Day. And finally, Brecourt Manor. We showed up, and of course, as I stated before, there isn't much to see. There is a memorial, and you can see the landscape. However, the property is private, and therefore you are not able to walk upon and see if you can find some of the fighting positions and things of that nature. As day one came to a close, we headed back to the Airbnb and enjoyed a wonderful dinner after having shopped at the local grocery market. Day two consisted of a former German artillery battery that has been turned into a museum, several, if not all, of the airborne memorials in the area where the drop zones were, and Carentan. The battery is quite interesting. The museum was very well done. Most of the bunkers were almost exactly the same. But you were able to walk around the entire perimeter. It was interesting to learn that the battery could shoot rounds almost as far as point to hawk. And there was another interesting artifact, which was where a round came in through the door of the bunker, hit the back wall, exploded, and left quite a big hole. And from there, it was almost a direct shot to the bulk of the airborne memorials. In this area was heavy fighting between 6 and 9 June, mostly from airborne regiments of the 82nd Airborne Division. The major memorial was called the Iron Mike Memorial, which was a memorial for all of the organizations of the 82nd Airborne. The memorials included the 325 Glider Infantry Regiment, the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. On day 3, the weather did not cooperate as we'd hoped, and our initial plan was to see point to hawk the Omaha Beach area, and the Normandy American Cemetery. The weather held up great for Pointe du Hoc. As we walked to the ground, one of the most interesting things we noticed were these huge craters. We learned later that they were actually craters from bombs being dropped in the days leading up to the invasion on D-Day. After Pointe du Hoc, we headed towards Omaha Beach. We made a quick stop at the Musée D-Day Omaha. Not a very big museum, it did offer some really cool artifacts and exhibits. The weather held up okay at the memorial and during our lunch at La Omaha. So we decided to stop at one other museum, the Memorial Museum of Omaha Beach. We returned to the car and made a quick stop at a 2nd Infantry Division memorial. We left at 9 o'clock in the morning and headed to Mont-Saint-Michel. After about a 1.5-hour drive, we parked with no problems. We walked to the shuttle bus and decided that because the line was so long, we would walk into Mont-Saint-Michel. We purchased our tickets to visit the Abbey online. However, if you were to wait and buy them at the Abbey, the line was not too long. Of course, it was a Wednesday. It is also worth noting that we had lunch at the Mont-Saint-Michel, and there is a lot of discussion online as to how difficult it is to get an appointment or a reservation. We had no problems. Of course, we were eating at almost noon, so things hadn't really picked up yet. And while the area was quite crowded with people, it wasn't so crowded that we couldn't get a good meal and not have to wait too long. Once we returned to the car, and parking was expensive, we headed to the Brittany American Cemetery just outside of St. James. Today we're at the Brittany American Cemetery just outside of St. James, France. It is the final resting place for 4,404 American soldiers who were killed during the Normandy or Brittany campaigns. Up at the entrance there's a wall that contains the name of over 500 missing, and the rosettes next to their name identify those who have been found. This cemetery is located on the American Temporary Cemetery of St. James that was established in August of 1944 by the Third Army as they pushed further into France. If you get a chance to read the Medal of Honor citation and story of Sherwood Holman, I highly suggest that you do. He was responsible for the surrender of almost 100 German soldiers single-handedly. It's a pretty amazing story. PFC Pressman is another example of conspicuous gallantry. And he led an assault of his team as a PFC through several hedgerows, avoiding enemy mortar, machine gun, and sniper fire. And eventually, after killing and capturing several enemy riflemen, he was killed by enemy fire. But as he fell to the ground, he threw his hand grenade to defeat his last enemy. So
dying in front of a grenade is heroic?
Yeah. Our final day of traveling consisted of visiting Omaha Beach once again, the Overlord Museum, and the Normandy American Cemetery now that the weather had improved. We finished up with another lunch at La Omaha and then decided to head to Cherbourg. Our son Everett had noticed that there was a Titanic exhibition at La Sainte-Mere in Cherbourg. It was only about a 45-minute drive from our location, and in addition to the Titanic exhibition, there was an aquarium exhibition and a decommissioned French nuclear submarine that you could walk through.
Along this wall, this half circle, are the names of 1,557 who are missing. This morning we're in Colvay-sur-Mer at the Normandy American Cemetery, where just over 9,300 Americans are buried, most of whom were killed on D-Day and the operations shortly thereafter. The initial cemetery was set up on the 8th of June, 1944. And now, these service members rest in peace beside the beaches that they stormed.
When planning this trip, I didn't want to try to pack too much into one day, and I also didn't realize how close together all of the places we wanted to see really were. But as you can see, the expenses that we paid are all roughly estimates. We paid approximately €56 in tolls to and from. The neat thing about the tolls is now you can use your tap credit card as opposed to having to dump in coins all the time. And that parking was, most of that parking came from the cost at Mont-Saint-Michel, which ended up being €21 for just about 4 hours. One of our favorite things to do with Airbnbs is to go grocery shopping to save some money on restaurants. And while that restaurant bill looks really high, 1/3 of that came from one meal. We weren't expecting the restaurant to be so expensive. Really, we only ate out, I want to say 4 times total. With 4 people, that's not actually that bad. The last thing I'll talk about is museum tickets. We probably could have stuck with the 2 museums at Utah and the Overlord Museum, but I really like museums and I really like to see the artifacts, so we tried not to miss a single museum. But if you're going and you're pressed for time, I would suggest the Overlord Museum and the museum at Utah Beach. We really appreciate you watching. Make sure you subscribe, click post notifications, follow us on our other social medias at TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks again. Au revoir.